Hi, welcome to this session. The topic is effective test automation, and this particular topic is posted under blog site VS Kumar blogs wordpress.com, and the relevant audience or recommended audience are QA managers, test managers, test leads, test engineers, test analysts, testers, automation test engineers, developers, development leads, development managers, product owners. And the watch criteria is minimal awareness on test automation should be there for the participants, and the takeaways are knowledge and thought process on how to implement an effective test automation practices in an organization and how to reduce the delivery cycle time. Now let us move forward for the next slide. This particular page is grabbed from that blog site in that blog, and let us see the contents, and I'll explain after each sentence or group of sentences. There are so many ways the test automation techniques or methodology can be applied from the individual's experience. With reference to my past experience on different business applications, technologies and tools were used, I came up with the below effective testing process to help the QA testing teams. Let us say my experiences might be different from others' experiences. My way of doing the work is different. My way of adopting processes, procedures, standards are different from others. So with that experiences, I have developed a kind of process for effective test automation, which I am going to demonstrate it here in this session to help the QA testing teams. You can also consider this as a practice implementation for any proof of concept project on test automation. For example, if you are working on product testing, manual testing, and you can introduce automation practices by taking proof of concept with this process. So at the same time you will see the returns on that process steps, and awareness to the teams will come, and at the same time the return on investment can be defined once that is done and implemented as a POC to demonstrate to the client how much time can be saved by using the automation scripts and how much time it takes to do manual testing only, and the resources cost, such kind of things. And also please note, as I mentioned in one of my blogs, continuous test automation planning, the automation process is a development project. Obviously it is a purely a SDLC process. Only thing is we are taking the test requirements, we are taking the test design and converting them into test automation scripts to run them against a software build. My previous blog elaborates on incremental test automation during agile practices on how to accelerate the cycle time reduction. So this particular blog, continuous test automation planning in agile, explains the incremental test automation while following the agile practices, and also it talks about how to save the cycle time reduction for each sprint planning. That way one can identify for the past sprint requirements, they can identify particular area of the test requirements and start doing the incremental test automation. This blog can give the fundamental process steps involved in the automation development project, which can be controlled the failure and unused of test automation projects. And your peer groups also can understand the process steps through this blog and can be convinced on your automation plans and the efforts. So let us say you have the automation scripts made by one of the automation engineer, and you moved him to other projects. Those scripts are not being utilized by any of the existing manual testers because the orientation was not created, the process was not followed, the responsibilities and roles were not defined properly, and the awareness was not created among the managers, among the leads of SDLC and QLC project teams. So such kind of things are lacking. Because of that, it is lying idle, those scripts, even though the builds are not changed in those areas, the design is not existing, and those are valid scripts. So, but awareness should be there how to use them, how to save the cycle time, where all they can use it in between the manual testing also. Now let us move to other slides. In this session, I would like to take some small example of the application, which is e-commerce applications typical process, because when we talk about the process steps in the chart, automation chart, we talk about test requirements, test cases, test data. To correlate those things, we need some live application. So that is the reason I have taken this application to discuss its flow, a scenario kind of thing. Let us say any e-commerce site, you take any online retail store. From that, there will be through phone also you can book the orders, and through web also you can book the orders. I have taken a simple example with where customer help desk is there, and we can call them and book the orders. At the same time, you can also access the site through your user ID. Now, the first step is you need to have user ID to any site to access the retail store information. And once you log in it, the login credentials will be verified every time when you log in, and whatever you are booking it, the process will be monitored from the backend help desk user or customer service support person, and the payment details will be processed by the gateway, credit card or some other gateways, and the web server will have the details, and transactions will be confirmed for each stage of the order booking and shipment tracking, all that kind of things. So now in these areas you have different test requirements. Through the test requirements you can define the test cases. You will also need to have particular test data to test that particular functionality. So let us move forward into the next slide. What is the typical test documentation practices? I am trying to recap for all of you the typical test documentation practices. In any project, these are the documentation will be there: usability standards, GUI standards, project standards, design standards, and requirements, code requirements, where the developer will have written code requirements before going for coding, the infrastructure requirements, the software functions, the user requirements. Using all these assets of the project, the test plan will be prepared, and also test requirements will be built, and test cases can be constructed it, and the relevant test data can be identified from the test criteria, and these test requirements and test cases can be mapped using the test requirements matrix. And once these all are ready, these 3, 4, 5 areas, there will be a review, and during the review the flaws can be identified in test requirements, test cases, and data, and again they can revisit all these project documentation and correct them and resubmit for review, and if they are passed it will be ready for test execution. It means you have a test case, you have a test requirement, you have test data to start the manual testing. This is the typical process which is getting ready for test execution. Now let us move to other slide. Let us see the chart about the test automation process. It has got regression test cases. They were identified, and test requirements, test data, and we are going to identify whether those can be considered for test automation. And once they are identified, if they are not fitting under the automation, they will be moved to manual testing test cases. At the same time, test requirements also, and they will be moved to manual testing. The test data also will be mapped. It means basically we are identifying in this area the group of test cases, test requirements, test data mapped for manual testing only. Those cannot be automated due to some environmental issues and functionality issues, dependencies, such kind of things. And once they are identified for automation, these requirements and test cases, we can analyze for test automation for 2 ways. One is designing the scripts as requirement, design requirement. Another one is repeatable steps can be identified for making the automation framework. Once these frameworks are ready, like you can define them as a functions, and they will be added into the development framework modules, and design scripts also will be coming there. Let us say you have a login ID, that particular user will come and log in. Backend, you are supposed to authenticate that particular user and authorize him to access the particular web pages in the retail store from the e-commerce site. So that is the example. Repeatable steps can be there to authenticate, authorize the user for login credentials. That will be a repeatable step, but the scenario is login into the user page. So that is the user scenario. So in that scenario, you have a design script as login user, then repeatable steps are verification of the user kind of things. Now once this particular script is ready, and there will be a design review on that. I mean, manually you are writing the requirements. One is design test script requirement and automation framework requirement. You will be reviewing them. Once they are ready, you can apply to the test tool also. The test tool can be QA, QTP also can be there. Then there can be test complete tool also can be used. You can use IBM rational tool, such kind of things. But each of them will have their proprietary languages. Using that proprietary languages, internal mechanism need to be planned it to design the script, to design the functions, all those. I'm not going to explain that particular part about the tools process, but overall automation process I'm going to take up here to consider. So let us say you have defined the script manually with the automation tool, picked up that scripts for reviewing purpose. Then once that is reviewed it, and it will go for unit testing. If there are flaws in that, again it will go for correcting the design test script area and frameworks also. Again it will go for tools process, and tool will apply for correction, and there will be test data also you picked up from these particular process steps, and you will be adding into the data driven testing steps. There will be external files where you will have formatted data also, and with that also you will be applying the test script to populate the data onto the screens. And once this particular GI tool developed scripts are reviewed it, they will go for unit testing. You need to certify them for unit testing. Once the unit testing is passed, you can prepare the regression test suites. So the regression test suites purpose is, let's say user ID need to be verified it, so one need to log in and test it. Let us say user access need to be verified it. This particular script need to be taken it, and you should run it with different user IDs with different privileges. So then system design can be verified it for defects. So if you have identified the defects, or obviously you are going to reuse them. Now let us close this part 1 session at this point of time. Then we will see in the next part, because of the video size is becoming more to load onto the YouTube. I'll suspend this here, and please revisit the next part.